Harding, Johnson, Melton, Palermo, Rowe, Bagley. Mr. President.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remarks by Councilmember Don Rowe.
You may have a seat. I was thinking this last week, it's been just over 100 days since the installation ceremony for us up here back in June. And for three of us, it's been a whirlwind of events and clearly a steep learning curve. So I think it's appropriate for me to just offer up a few thank yous to some people this afternoon. First of all, to the four experienced colleagues that sit with us up here. You've been a wealth of knowledge and freely help whenever asked, regardless of party affiliation. The City Council staff and City Clerk staff, their knowledge of the city and how things work and get things done has been invaluable to us, and they keep us out of trouble. The city department directors and their staffs have been very welcoming, always willing to listen and respond. And finally, to you, our neighbors who come each week, you're fully engaged and have passion for your city. Really, that is our goal for all of us. We want the city we love, the city of Omaha, to be the best city that she can be. And I just wanted to take a minute and say thank you.
Thanks.
An affidavit of publication is on file for the pre-council and city council meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Welcome to the Omaha City Council. We look forward to having you here and hearing your testimony today. We request that you turn your cell phones to mute or even off before we start our program here today. And we're going to start with a presentation and proclamation in honor of Douglas County Commissioner Mike Boyle. And as City Council President, it's my honor to read this proclamation and offer some remarks. And we'll have each council member offer any remarks they care to give at that point, and also offer the family to make any observations they might want to make when that occurs. So I'd invite the family up to the podium if you want to come up. We're honored to have Commissioner Maureen Boyle here today. Brothers, Mike and Jim, and I think we have
Pat's on the way.
Pat on the way, and maybe Maggie by Zoom, we'll see.
Maggie on TV.
Maggie on TV, excellent, we're all here. So I'll start with the formal part of this by reading this proclamation that we'll present to the family afterwards. And it reads like this. Whereas Mike Boyle was born on January 19th, 1944, and graduated from Creighton University in 1973, with a degree in economics and management from the Business Administration School. And whereas Mike Boyle served as Deputy Douglas County Election Commissioner from 1968 to 1971, and as the County Election Commissioner from 1971 to 1979, and whereas Mike Boyle graduated from Creighton University School of Law in 1977 and practiced law in Omaha for more than 30 years, and whereas Mike Boyle married Ann Howell on April 24th, 1965 at St. Cecilia Cathedral in Omaha, and had 5 children, Maureen, Mike, Pat, Jim, and Maggie, and 18 grandchildren. And whereas Mike Boyle was elected the 43rd mayor of Omaha in 1981 at the age of 37, making him one of the youngest mayors in the city's history, and serving until 1987. And whereas Mike Boyle was appointed in 1997 to the Douglas County Board of Commissioners to represent District 1, which includes much of South Omaha and a part of downtown Omaha, and won election to that office in 2000, and then 4 more times for a total of 6 terms. And whereas, in addition to his dedication to public service, the Omaha City Council would like to recognize Mike Boyle for his tireless support of the city of Omaha, we now therefore proclaim September 21st, 2021 as Mike Boyle Day in the city of Omaha. Thank you. Thanks for being here, and thanks for your father. And I want to take a minute before I pass the baton here to offer a few of my personal reflections too. Um, you know, it's hard to capture Mike's character in a speech, and you all did an excellent job with the service and offering your remarks. But offering that many years of public service is truly incredible. And he wasn't a career politician, he was a career public servant, and there is a big difference. It was great to see so many former and current elected officials at the service on Sunday. We had former congressmen, mayors, senators, city council members, county commissioners, you name it. And I think that's really a tribute to his public service and the inspiration he provided to so many others, including myself. But even with that, it's always the personal reflections that really matter. So it goes without saying that he was a hilarious character himself, but I too was inspired as a young candidate and campaign worker by him and your mom, who took me very seriously as a young kid. Here they were, two very experienced public servants and elected officials, and that always struck me as something that was so endearing and true was they took everybody seriously and engaged everyone and cared about everyone. And that was definitely apparent when I worked with them. They cared deeply about all people, especially those that had been marginalized. I thought having the River City Mixed Chorus sing at the service was a great touch. I also knew Mike and Ann as family members and friends. We grew up as kids together, classmates with some of you at Central High School. So I've been thinking about you all week. And Maureen, it's awesome to see you carry on the family tradition in public service on the county board, and also to see the 18 grandchildren. That's really his true legacy. I'll end with one kind of funny story from the day on Sunday, because Mike loves stories, right? As the service was concluding and I was preparing to leave, I hadn't taken one step, kind of deep in thought about everything, and someone who was also there came up to me and said, "Hey, I've got a sidewalk problem. Can you help me with it?" And at first I thought, oh my gosh, at a funeral? But then I thought, how appropriate. Mike would have thought that was hilarious, first of all. And second of all, here he was still bringing local government to people, and that's why we're all here, right? So I'm honored to have this time to talk about your dad, and was very pleased to call him a friend.
Thank you.
I'll open the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you. And yeah, I didn't have the opportunity to meet Mike until about 8 years ago when I first got on the council, and then really get to know him being on the Omaha Douglas County Building Commission with Mike. And it was really enjoyable because he always had something to say, even when it was serious and we were maybe disagreeing with things going on with the juvenile court building and things. But he always brought some levity to the situation. He always had kind of a wise crack to kind of lighten the atmosphere. And he was also always very complimentary. He was always trying to build people up. So even when you disagreed, his goal wasn't to tear you down or tell you you're wrong. It was to sit and talk. And what I figured out was the best way to talk to him about things maybe that I wanted that the city or the county could work together with is I would invite him to lunch at my law firm, and I would bring in Judge Ron Reagan and talk about stories. After about 45 minutes, when they would start going back to 1970, I would say, I'm going to go ahead and let the two of you continue to share your stories. But I loved listening to those stories, and I love the fact that Mike was always willing to listen and tell you, that's a good idea, but here's another way to think about it too. And again, always trying to build you up. That was kind of his character, and that's what was so endearing. And again, Maureen, I know I talked to you a little bit, but having you get elected on the board with your dad, I just found so touching. I know he was just so proud of that fact, and we talked about it. And I'm very close with my own father, so I know how difficult this must be, but also to be able to do that with you and have that election and have you on the board, I just know he was so happy about, and we talked about it. So I don't want to beleaguer it, but I also, when you go back and I think Councilman Festerson, when he was talking about the timeline of things, I think your dad was election commissioner and went to law school, and I mean, he was always engaged in doing a lot and in getting that done. But you just look, his entire life was dedicated to people. Even as a lawyer, it was helping people, and I just admire that so much. And I am so sorry for your loss, and I do want to thank you for sharing your father with not just us, but this entire city, because he made it a better place to be. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Rowe, you're recognized.
You know, I am pretty new to this role and didn't really have an opportunity to work with Mike on anything. But we did meet several months ago, and he was so very encouraging and willing to lift me up as a newcomer into this kind of a role. And so I just wanted to thank you too as a family for sharing your father with the city. His fingerprints, your mom and dad's fingerprints are all over this city. And we recognize that and appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Mr. Harding.
Thank you. To the Boyles, I'm so sorry for your loss, and as others have said, it's what your father, your mother, your family, the three of you and your other siblings who are not here, add to our community is truly amazing. I'd meet with your dad every once in a while. We'd go have coffee, and I think, gosh, I hope they're still dating, but I think one of his granddaughters was dating like a second cousin of mine. Are they still dating?
Elsie and Ross.
Yeah, are they
that's
still
my
dating?
daughter. Yes, they're definitely dating. They're engaged.
Oh, well, that's great. Oh, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
so that's.
Family.
So I'm glad I brought that up then. So we used to joke about, hey, maybe someday we're going to be related.
You bet.
And now you've given me the good news that by maybe posthumously we'll be related.
We'll send you an invitation to the wedding.
Please, I would truly be honored. That's really great news to hear. So I'll tell a story because I know your dad likes stories, and the point of this story is, and this is one of the things that I think I learned from your dad in watching him, because I've knew him way back when as well, but it was I think my wife and I were talking to your mom and dad at an event down at, it was probably CHI Center now, whatever it was back then at the time. And I think your father had a great knack for getting people to know that sometimes you just can't take yourself too seriously, that you have to be able to laugh at yourself. And so he was telling a story, my wife and I were talking, and I mean, the story had been going on too long, like this speech is. But it was after a time he all of a sudden he reached in his jacket and he pulled out a sock. And he had like a sweater vest on or something like that. So the static cling when he was getting dressed must have at some point, don't worry, this is clean, by the way. At some point, and he just looked at it and he put it back in his jacket, and without missing a beat, he continued the conversation. And that was what I loved about your dad. He knew when to be serious, but he also knew when you had to laugh at yourself. And that's something I will always remember. And gosh, I'm glad to hear the news too about that's neat. Well, thank you again for sharing your father with us and our community, because as I said, your mom, your whole family have really given and sacrificed a lot to our community, and we're better for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm glad they're still together too, because I was on the edge of my seat, like, oh no, what if they're not still together? But, you know, your mom and dad were special to many people, my wife and myself included, from the times we were with them. And I know people talk about the stories that Mike told, and he always had a story. But I swear every time I was with him, I didn't know if it was his laugh at the end of the story or the story that I was laughing at. But nonetheless, it always brought a smile to my face. And of course, when we say Mike, we say Ann as well, because Ann was definitely in charge, and she would let you know that. And couldn't pick better people to meet at Johnny's for a cheeseburger on a Friday, or Casio's for a steak during lunch. I mean, they just really were. I remember the first time I met your dad at an event long before I got elected, and I kept saying to myself, "Man, this guy used to be the mayor of Omaha. He's talking to me, right?" Like, and I think by the end of the night, he still remembered my name, and I'm like, "Oh man, that guy, he's something else. He's great." And I remember last time I talked to him, which wasn't that long ago. He helped me out a lot. Like Councilmember Rose said, we have thanks to give, and I have thanks to give to your dad. Early on, being elected to this position, I found out that we were going to chair the South Omaha Historical Grant Committee together. And of course, I had no idea what that was. And we got together, of course, at Louis M's, where, you know, we had a little breakfast, and he said, well, here's how it works, and here's how we go about it. And I said, well, gosh, how do you decide who gets what for this grant money? And he said, it's really easy. We take care of those who have a harder decision and choice of trying to take care of themselves. Like, that's our job. That's why we're here. There's a lot of people in this city that can take care of themselves, and that's great, but we're going to focus on those who can't. And I learned that early on, and it really made a lot of sense from the different groups in South Omaha that we gave money to, that projects they had otherwise wouldn't have, you know, we seen them projects through. So he taught me that early on, and that stayed with me, helping those who couldn't help themselves. They were both, your mom and dad both were true public servants every step of the way. I remember at the funeral, somebody told me, well, my dad wasn't really diplomatic all the time. And I'm sure because, and somebody's comments from the family, maybe it was you, Maureen, maybe not, but you said, or no, maybe, I don't know. But it was the comment of, well, your dad's the mayor. How, you know, when you guys were younger, right? Because everybody was like less than 25. And how your dad's the mayor. How does that work in the house? And somebody said, well, if your dad's the plumber, how does that work in the house? You know, it's still our dad, right? You know, things still move on. So your dad taught me that important lesson that I've never forgot. And also, because I was blessed enough to have many meals with him, I'm diehard. Like, you wouldn't look at me and think I'm picky, but I'm kind of picky when it comes to salad dressing. It's Italian only, right? And we're eating one day, and he says, yeah, I'll do Italian with some kind of crumbles or something on there. I'm like, well, okay, what's that? And it's these blue cheese crumbles. And still to this day, my kids and my wife make fun of me because now I order my salads with Italian dressing and blue cheese crumbles. And I love it. So we all take something away. Thank you for sharing your mom and dad. Your prayers for your family will continue on with us. And thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Councilman Bagley.
Thanks, Mr. President. I gathered my thoughts. There's so many things that come to mind when I think of your dad. And I'll start with his roots were in St. Cecilia's Cathedral, where I was born and raised, as your dad was, and your mom, and I would be remiss if we didn't mention the late, great, dear Sam J. Howell, that I think taught your mom and dad certainly a lot about politics and caring for people. I was talking to one of our staff, I want to out Steve Scarpello here, who does a great job on our city council staff, and you know, we were talking, Steve's been in city government for a long time in politics. Said we were talking about your dad, and we talked about a lot of neat things. One of the neatest things he said was, Mike Boyle was an altar boy at my mom and dad's wedding, going back to when your dad was at St. Cecilia's. I thought that was a pretty neat little story there that Steve told me. From Cathedral High School, we had Mike Boyle, Mayor Leahy, and Sam Howell. And that's a high bar for somebody sitting in this council seat. These great pillars of the community that I looked up to as a kid, that in 1981 and 1985, my dad had me out there pounding them Mike Boyle signs with those McGuire boy cousins of yours. We had a lot of fun doing that, and it taught me a lot about politics, and what you're doing in politics is you're representing your community and people. And your dad, I think of many things come to mind with your dad. 3 words: compassion, resilience, and wisdom. And I'll give you a story of his wisdom. My dad and I were at Hy-Vee on 50th and Center Street, had breakfast on a Sunday morning, and we're ready to roll out, and in comes Mike Boyle. And 2 hours later, me and my dad are leaving because your dad sat down with us, and I basically just listened to a legend like your dad, sitting with a mailman and me being his son, listening to all the great stories about city politics, our families, Cathedral, St. Cecilia's. And it was just, I'll always cherish that because my dad's passed as well. And I know, Pat, Mike, Maggie, Maureen, and Jim, you will have those stories of your dad. People will come and tell you those, and you'll just be driving down the street and you'll think of that. And I'll leave with this. When I got into this council race, the second elected official I met with was your dad. And he made me feel like I was the greatest candidate in the history of politics. And I knew he was giving me a little Irish fibbing with it, but I was taking every word of it because it was the gospel of Mike Boyle. And about a month later, I got a card in the mail with the contribution and the nicest handwritten note from your father that was so touching. And I got a box of those cards. That's going in my office on the wall, because these grounds at City Hall where your dad spent his life and your grandpa did and your mom did, it touched me, and it always will. So I give my condolences again to you guys and your family. Your dad's gone, but he never, ever, ever will be forgotten. So thank you for that great gift to your mom and dad. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. President. To the Boyle family, I too share in the sentiments of your loss to your dad. I do sit here today very young to City Council. However, I do remember back in June, your dad gave me a phone call and congratulated me on my new position and offered me some words of wisdom. So I would like to take this moment at this time to thank you and your family for giving us the opportunity, the City of Omaha, the opportunity to work with him. He will be dearly missed, and he did touch a lot of lives.
Thank you. The floor is yours.
You want to say anything? I just wanted to say that for the family, we really appreciate this gesture, very generous gesture of all of you. It's wonderful that he, at least for most of you, had an opportunity to get to know you as well. He was always very willing to share himself because I think that his goal was just try to make this town and this city a better place. And by working with all of you, I think that's really his goal all along. So we were happy to share Mom and Dad. We knew that pretty much from day one. We just kind of had that figured out. I can tell you there was one time that, and it wasn't always politics when we had to share them. There's one day in particular that comes to mind for me is he was over for Thanksgiving. And there was a young man at the juvenile center, I believe out in Fremont. And just through administrative concerns and issues, they couldn't get him home to his grandparents' house for the holiday. So Dad decided that it was very important for that young person who was really in a very precarious life position. And he said, I have to go and get this kid to his family. So all of us, recognizing this is just something that he had to do on Thanksgiving. And without any hesitation, without any concern, we all said, we'll save a plate for you. And he went and just got this young person to where he needed to be. So it wasn't always about, it was really rarely about, big deal kind of stuff. It was the little stuff that really mattered. And he impacted a lot of people in ways like that all the time. And that's I think what we've learned and what we've observed. And so when you talk about that legacy, that's kind of how we feel about life as well. No one's too important, and everyone is very important. So everyone counts, everyone matters, and that's probably the biggest takeaway that in life that we got from Dad. And again, thank you very much. This is very generous of you.
Right, and so as Jim alluded to, I want to thank all of you for doing this too. I want to make it very clear that Dad taught me a lot of things as I was sitting on the board. And who gets to be on a commission like this with their dad? What an honor, what a privilege, what a unique opportunity. I feel like the luckiest kid in the world to be able to do that. And so one thing that he really instilled in me as a representative was, you all are getting crazy emails like I do about different things, but he said, remember, he said, when you're getting these emails, he said, you can be opponents, but don't be enemies. So it's okay to disagree, but we really have to treat each other with basic dignity and respect. And that's how we get things done. He was really quick to, cross the aisle. He told me about the conversations that he would have with Brinker and Amy, even though, oops, sorry about that, that they're in different party affiliations and actually disagree on several things. But there were so many things we have in common. So he instilled in us the belief to really, every individual matters, every individual counts. And when you were in a conversation with him one-on-one, he always made you feel like you were the most important person in the world. And you know what? You were to him right there. So that, to me, is the legacy of our dad. He treated us kids that way. As a girl growing up in the 70s, he never told me what I could and couldn't do. He liked it that I played sports and would, beat all the boys in the neighborhood, right guys? So I mean, he never discouraged me, and, Mom tried to put a dress on me one day after I sat in the dirt. That was done. So it's just one of those things where they never told us there wasn't something we could not do. And even if you had the wildest, nuttiest idea in the world, they would support you just to make sure that you have somebody behind you saying, go ahead and give it a try. I mean, the guy ran for mayor in his 30s, and so that probably sounded kind of cockamamie too, but so same deal. He's saying, why not try? It's if you don't take great risk, you don't have great reward. But his goal was always, always to serve those who did not have a voice, to serve those who needed support, and to be there for anybody who needed him. So we appreciate that legacy and just stress the fact that, public service, that's what we're here for. And it makes me proud to be able to follow in his footsteps, and I was able to take some of his wisdom on that and remember why we're all here. So public service is what we're here for. We have to think of those folks that need us the most and do our best to represent them, and that's what would make my dad proud. Thank you. That's his. Thank you, Pete. Thank you. Here's Pat. You made it.
Just one of my favorite stories about Dad was during the campaign season, like around St. Patty's Day, we go to St. Anne's, and this is a real brief story, but the food would get cold, the beers would disappear fast, and Dad never sat down. It was always a great being around him, being in the communities where he belonged, and thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pete.
One more item before we start our regular agenda. I was told just a couple minutes ago that we have 2 birthdays today in the room. I want to recognize Donna Waller and Dave Fansloff for having their birthdays on the same day. How old are you guys? All right, Madam Clerk.
All right, item 6, a resolution to approve the preliminary plat for Westbury Farm Replat 2, located southeast of 218th and Karen Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing and vote on number 6 is today. We'll hear from the applicant first, Mr. Bachman.
Mr. President, members of the council, John Bachman, 10250 Regency Circle. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Proponents of number 6, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 6 is approved, 7-0. Item 7, a resolution to approve the preliminary plat for Deer Creek Replat 24, located at 7411 and 7417 North 126th Avenue. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing and vote on number 7 is today. The applicant, please.
Good afternoon, Mark Westergaard, ENA Consulting Group, 10909 Mill Valley Road. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have about this small replat.
Thank you. Any proponents for number 7? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 7 is approved, 7-0. Items 8 through 11 can be considered together for the trails located northeast of 192nd Street and George Miller Parkway. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Items 8 and 9 are ordinances to rezone this property from AG District to DR District and R4 District. Item 10, a resolution to approve the final plat. Item 11, a resolution to approve the subdivision agreement.
Public hearing and vote on items 8 through 11 are today. The applicant, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Brent Beller, 1140 West Center Road, on behalf of the developer. We're here for any questions.
Thank you. Any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0. Item 12, an ordinance to approve a PUR overlay district in an R7 district located at 406 Woolworth Avenue. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing and vote on number 12 is today. The applicant, please.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name's David Burton. I'm with 406 Woolworth Avenue LLC. Address is 14993 Charles Circle. Here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any proponents on number 12? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 12 is approved, 7-0. Item 13, a resolution to approve the 508 and 1904 tax increment financing redevelopment project plan located at 508 South 19th Street and at 1904 Farnham Street in an amount up to $2,373,961.
Public hearing and vote on number 13 is today. Mr. Seaton.
Yes, good afternoon. Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning Department. This is a downtown project, a LIHTC-funded affordable housing project. That means low-income housing tax credits are involved. This project involves 2 different sites, separate sites, along 19th Street, about 2.5 blocks away from each other, both very near to where we are now. In fact, one is just across the street. On the northernmost site, 508 Farnham, we have a historic building rehab project that will convert this building into 54 studio and 1-bedroom apartment units. Again, these are affordable housing units with income qualified tenants. There will be some street level commercial space and a 1,200 square foot speakeasy lounge in the basement. Going about 2.5 blocks south, To the other site that is also for the other half of the affordable housing units, we have the vacant parking lot and an existing two-story building there. It's right next to what we call the Red Field, which was rehabbed as a TIF project not too long ago. It's completed now. Nice historic building that was rehabbed by the same developer as the rest of the property, or the project we're looking at now. The two-story building will be demolished, and the entire site will see new construction of a 5-story apartment building. This is the Red Field here, so this is the project we're looking at today. This 5-story structure will have parking stalls on the first 2 levels, approximately 100 parking stalls, and above that will be 59 LIHTC funded affordable housing units. Developers 508 and 1904 Owner LLC, managed by Neeraj Agarwal. Total project investment in downtown is approximately $34.6 million. The request for TIF is $2,373,961. I should note that between the 2 projects, they're putting $112,000 into public improvements to improve the streetscaping. The developer is also providing a $35,000 contribution into the Downtown Improvement Fund. Project meets the required criteria of the TIF program. It's an appropriate land use for the area, and it complies with the goals of the city's master plan. We ask for your approval.
Thank you. Proponents, please.
Neeraj Agarwal for the applicant developer, 3814 Farnham Street, Suite 201. I'm really just here to highlight this is another step in our ongoing efforts to provide more affordable housing in downtown and midtown Omaha. We've done quite a bit of work in North Omaha, and we're looking to add more affordable housing more in our urban core. So as Don noted, we think both of these projects would be great additions. The 508 site currently is an underutilized surface parking and 2-story parking garage, so that'll just result in a better use for that site long term. And the 1904 Farnham building, again, was primarily executive office suites, but with the nature of office not really being utilized to its full potential, so it'll be a good repurposing of that asset. But we will be using state and historic tax credits as well, in addition to low-income housing tax credits. But with that, our overall timeline is targeting spring of next year to break ground, and approximately probably 18 to 20 months for construction for overall, for both projects. With that, I'll just open up for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Excuse me.
Oh, come on down.
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha 68132, excuse me. I won't bore you with comments on all of these tax increment financing things today, other than this. I'd really like for some informational sessions to be held to fully explain all of these ins and outs of tax increment financing for this purpose. Most of us are working people. Most of us are involved in lots of other things than you are on these everyday things. So we do not understand your language, the way it's written. But let me give you just a simple, uninformed citizen's perspective of how this sounds to me when I read it to myself. I know you guys have first readings, second readings, third readings, but I don't hear you read. We come to these meetings, really don't hear you read them. So I'm going to give you a summary of how I think this reads and how other citizens might take it, unless you correct my misunderstandings, my disinformation, I guess you would call it. But it sounds like you're giving stuff away to a developer, number one. The U.S. Constitution and the state constitution all say you will not make special laws. But when we use information like what's written here, that affordable housing, tax increment, tax credits for low income. That implies that there's other people getting benefits that I'm not. I'm not getting the benefit of a 15 or 20 year going on now, freeze of my property tax. I'm not getting the benefit of a loan to improve my house. I'm not getting income tax credits for affordable housing for me. I wouldn't qualify for this down here. The city's participation implies to me and other citizens that, well, I'm part of the city, so I must be paying something on this. But really, what really upsets me and gives me a bad impression, as it should other citizens, is that, oh, here's a developer that's going to cough back up $35,000 in proceeds, loan proceeds, I might add, to the downtown public improvement. Now, back in the days of funny television, George Gobel and, even Will Rogers would have said, boy, sounds like somebody's patting me on the back and I'll pat yours. So please open things up, describe it, explain it a little more. In layman's language, layman's terms, not legal, not legalese. Thank you. I am against it.
Thank you. Public hearing is closed. Mr. Agarwal, I just thank you for your work in affordable housing. You've had several projects now come before the City Council that we appreciate, and we want to continue that work throughout the city. And on a day when we've had some reflections about people's parents, I wanted to have a brief moment to reflect upon the Service Life Building, which is one of these projects in this particular item that you're refurbishing. So not only are you refurbishing a National Register landmark building, but my father had his law office in that building for many, many years. And so it's neat to see that building remain, neat to see it converted to affordable housing. And I think he'd probably appreciate the speakeasy on the bottom too. Mr. Bagley, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. I'll make a motion to support this. I think it's great that, we hear about the affordable housing issue constantly, and this is one of the many steps we're taking to try to address it. So as President Fesserson said, we had lunch in that building, and you shared with me the stories of your dad that worked in that building. So it is great to see this happen in downtown in a much-needed area. So I'll make a motion to support this. Thank you.
Second. Roll call.
Harding. Yes. Johnson. Yes. Melton. Yes. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley. Aye. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 13 is approved, 7-0. Item 14, a resolution to approve the Highlander Phase 4 Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Plan located south and east of Burdett and North 30th Streets in an amount up to $1,480,000.
Public hearing and vote on number 14 is today. Proponents, please.
Yes, good afternoon. Don Seaton, once again, Omaha City Planning Department. The Highlander Phase 4, I'm sure you're familiar with the previous phases of this project. Southeast of Burdett and along North 30th. This TIF project is a fairly large and ambitious project. As you can see on the map here, we have 5 separate sites or parcels all grouped together. And this is 30th here, so they're just east of 30th Street. 5 vacant parcels totaling 4.5 acres roughly. We're looking at 20 different residential structures that are planned in this project. Although one of the residential structures is a mixed-use project with some first-floor commercial. One on this upper corner here, the northernmost portion of the site, is a 3-story mixed-use apartment building with some first-floor retail. But the other parcels will essentially consist of row home and duplex residential structures. I'm going to start with that northernmost property. This is the apartment development with the first floor commercial, along with some row homes there. All in all, with all of the sites, well, let me give you a couple renderings. This would be the row homes here on this site. We have an elevation. and then a colored rendering for the apartment building, mixed-use building. Looks like an attractive development. If I may now look at the rest of the sites, the other 4 parcels, you can see the variety of buildings there, all row homes. All in all, we're looking at a total of 108 residential units. Now, this is a mixed income project, means that some of the units will be for income qualified residents, moderate to lower income residents. The others will be market rate units. So it's mixed income, which is something we like to see. Out of the 108 units, 33 of the units will be market rate units. The site and project includes 109 on-site parking stalls. There will be some on-street parking provided as well. Many of the streets in the area presently are unimproved now. Out of the TIF that they are requesting, they're requesting $1,480,000 in TIF support. They're putting over $1 million back into improvements in the public right-of-way, which is really an exceptionally large amount of the TIF going towards public improvements. The developer's HPIV Affordable LLC, which is comprised of 75 North Revitalization Corporation and Brinshore Development. Brinshore's manager, Todd Lieberman, is a project representative. Total project cost is about $32 million. Project's been reviewed by the TIF committee and the planning board and approved by both. Meets the required criteria of the city's TIF program. There's an appropriate land use for the area and complies with the city's master plan. And with that, we ask for your approval.
Thank you. Other proponents? Ms. Franklin.
Good afternoon. Sydney Franklin with 75 North, 2112 North 30th Street, Suite 200 in Omaha. I'm here to answer any questions that may not have been addressed already by Don.
Great. Thank you. Any other proponents today?
Don Seaton, Omaha City Plan. I did just leave out one thing. I said I would address that. In this project, jobs, okay. We're looking at 7 new permanent positions created with this project. I don't have a number of construction jobs that will be provided. And the previous project, Neerage's project, I meant to mention that there would be 10 jobs created, 4 of which are permanent full-time, and 20 construction jobs. So my apologies.
Okay, thank you. Other proponents?
Cheryl Weston, 1811 Emmett Street, Omaha, Nebraska. And I'm here for a proponent. I know some of you will probably say, oh my God, can't believe it, but I'm here for that. But I do have some things that I would like, hopefully, that in your questioning that you will address, either from gentleman or this lady here. But as city council members, perhaps you would address these questions that our housing committee has reviewed this and have. Beginning with page 8, underneath that proposed use and project detail, it says that there's going to be 20 residential structure built, including 1 mixed-use building with 49 apartment units. The balance of the residential structures will include some duplex row homes and townhomes. Our questions are, so what efforts will it be to bring needed stores and business in to recruit it from the area, women, gender, minority, and so forth, when this apartment building will have the first floor for commercial space? And perhaps that question can be answered. You know, are there any efforts? And so when these plans come before you from the city planning and the developers and saying, perhaps they could be more clarified so that, as the gentleman spoke, that we understand in our language, simple language, English. The The apartment buildings, it says that there's going to be 37 replacement public housing rental units for households where rents are limited to 30% of the household income, 38 units for households at or where rents are limited to 30%. It has a total of 108 residential units. However, if you look down, it says it only has 109 off-street parking stalls. And we were wondering, there's no mention of how many of those stalls will be ADA. And also, if you're going to have that much into one area and you have no other areas, 109 street parking, 108 residential units. Nowadays, how many people do you know have one car? You're talking about building 3 and 4 bedrooms up to 5 units. So I think that needs to be addressed as the parking units, what would they consist of? And should there be? Maybe there should be less units and more parking, or how will that be addressed? When you look at page 9, we had a question where it was talking about in the last sentence there, the construction of new housing in a variety of formats and so forth for varying income levels contribute toward creating healthy and diverse neighborhoods. When we looked at this concept and you look at the number of housing units that are going to be for those who are underneath the poverty line, I don't necessarily, when I say I don't, we don't necessarily believe that this proposal does meet that criteria. So we would like to know if you could get that question answered for us. On page 14, we reviewed it, and in looking in item number 2, projects further a number of objectives of the Omaha Master Plan, including creating and preservation of healthy neighborhoods. We looked at this as replacement. When you talk about it, is it replacement for creating and preservation of healthy neighborhoods? We also looked at revitalization of older neighborhood communities, and we looked at this and considered it to be more displacement. What happens to those people who were in that area and have been displaced now? Further down, we looked at underneath cost-benefit analysis, item number 2. Active use, this project may lessen the parcel's historical impact on personal services such as fire and police. With so many units being crammed into one area, how is this going to lessen the impact on the services such as fire and police? Number 3, a minimal amount of permanent employment through the management and maintenance staff and employees of the retail areas. We question that when you look at page 32, and the gentleman did kind of answer that. When it says employees by type, you have a general labor, 2 permanent jobs. Sales and marketing, 4 permanent jobs. Management, 1 permanent job, and the total jobs, 7. Where we're questioning this, will these be from the community? Will they be making any effort to look from the community, those that have been displaced from there? Will you be looking at that? Will there be any requirement into the contract to the developer to be a living wage for these individuals who have these 7 jobs, or will they be minimal wage jobs? Because if they are, then you're creating a situation where the people haven't been uplifted. They're still in the poverty level, which is not going to change and make this a progressive area. He also mentioned, or it's listed here, that the number of jobs created, number retained, and so forth. And we would like to see, it always appears that in District 2 in our area, this section is never completed. And we would like to ask that if you would start requiring city planning to see that this is corrected. And this information is included. So we look at this, and then if you go to page 42, we did have a comment on item number 4, the objectives of the master plan. Again, here we are questioning how this is really going to create and preserve a healthy neighborhood when you continuously have so much low income. And I know everybody likes to use that word affordable housing, but what about the individuals, we call them middle? What about those individuals that won't qualify? So what you're doing, again, you're putting a lot of individuals who are already in poverty right back into the same situation. And those that can't, who are working 2 and 3 jobs, they are $100 over what is you can be allowed to make. And we don't feel that, or maybe they can address it and it just wasn't addressed in this package of material. And we also feel, how is this really revitalizing our older neighborhood communities when so many of our older neighbors are losing their property and projects are being taken and put into this? And they're not the ones that are benefiting because they're losing their home. And our last one was on page 43. Item number 5, we expect that a majority of residents will come from the surrounding area. And what we're saying here again, if the majority of those individuals are coming from the surrounding areas, what's being made to make their life better by having better paying jobs and looking at it from an economical standpoint? We do think that this will be a positive. It's just that we're asking for you to look and ask questions on this. But we will, and we do think that you will approve it, and we do support it in that manner, that it is going to bring a better looking area, but at what cost? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm sure we can get some of those questions answered from the applicants here in a minute. Are there any other proponents today?
Luis Jimenez, 2907 Dewey Street. Good afternoon, council members. I want to support this, not necessarily on the design, but because it's bringing development into the area. It is, today, it's empty. There was blocks of trees and just overgrowth that it has been cleared. There was people building like makeshift housing, dwellings, I mean, like a year or 2 ago, but it was cleared. So I think that this development will help with public safety, that there's things that are occupying the area. And I've recently been in this, lived in this neighborhood the last few years, but what I understand is that maybe 30 years ago, it was there's a lot of poverty, and that there was a lot of crime. And so what I'm seeing is a big change. The previous presenter does bring up good points, that at what cost to the neighborhood today is being placed. I think that good development also increases the income of the area. So if that's something that can happen with this development, that's another plus. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents?
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I may be out of order here, but I'm raising an objection as required under the Open Meetings Act. I am opposed to this item for reasons already stated, but I am opposed once again this week for 2 weeks in a row that this young gentleman probably appears to be a reporter. He's in and out of this meeting talking to people that have presented. Last week when I asked him about it out in the hall, he told me not to go there. He is required by the Open Meetings Act right over there, folks, to announce that he does represent somebody, if that's the case. If that's not the case, I'm sorry. But you talk about decorum in this room. You don't let me disturb decorum. Why do you let him in and out chasing people to get answers to questions? And sometimes I watch him go back towards the press room. I don't know what else is back there. There is a restroom over here. Why would he be going back there if not for those 2 reasons? I'm just saying that the appearance of this is against the Open Meetings Act. So you need to find out. You need to ask him.
All right, thank you.
And quite frankly, the reactions of some of you people that are elected are possibly against the Open Meetings Act treatment of a citizen. We do have a right, okay?
All right, Larry, we understand your
We
point.
have a right to speak and a right to participate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, do we not have a 5-minute rule on
We have not done the 5-minute rule today.
no 5-minute rule here? Okay.
Yep. Any other opponents? Seeing none, public hearings closed. Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to ask the Planning Department to come back up and answer the questions that were asked by Cheryl Weston. Ms. Weston listed, at least 20, 25 questions. All of those questions are, in my mind, some questions that need some answers to. Because as we know, when I ran my campaign, I talked a little bit about transparency and real talk, real change. And so the community in which I serve would like to have answers to those questions. So I don't know if you might need her to come back up to reiterate those questions, but we do need some answers to those questions. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning. The majority of those questions I'm probably going to defer to the developer to answer.
Okay.
Because they're questions that are outside of the scope of what the city does. For instance, we cannot dictate what salaries to pay the workers in whatever commercial units go into the mixed-use building. It's not for the city to say that those will be minimum wage jobs or $15 an hour jobs. So I will defer to the developer on that. Regarding parking, they need to meet zoning requirements. And my coworkers tell me that with the on-site parking and the on-street parking, there is sufficient parking. Displaced, the properties were vacant when they came in for TIF. So if somebody has been displaced from the site, I'm not aware of it. That's not part of the application. But I do know that some of these units are replacement units for the choice neighborhood development, which did displace some people. And that's the intention of having replacement units.
So her question would be that those individuals that were displaced, is there a plan to have them be first?
And again, I would defer to the developer on that because that refers to some history of the project that happens before the TIF application comes in. And it's something I'm not involved with or aware of, and it's not part of the TIF application.
And there were some other questions that she directed specifically to the planning department in terms of packaging, the package that we see here in terms of there were items like the wage and things of that nature, and the fact that we might want to see those kinds of things when we see the attached file.
There are a great deal of great deal of information and data that we need to collect for these and sift through. With the 20 buildings, mixed use, 5 parcels, all that was going on with this project, we went back and forth with the developer many, many times with many, many questions. And the part of the application where the number of estimated construction jobs was not listed, honestly, I missed. And we usually look for that. But trust me, a lot of time and effort went into this project. We had many, many questions. Todd Lieberman and Kate Bowles, I pretty well grilled them with a lot of details. And I got a lot of details from them to get to the point we are today. But we will watch that construction job number very closely in the future, and I apologize for that.
Okay, and can we speak to the fact that the idea for this development is to uplift those in poverty? And since the number of occupancy in this project will be of mixed income, and then there was a question from Ms. Weston regarding how that would somehow impact someone that maybe made over $100 and that maybe they wouldn't qualify to be a part of the opportunity. Cheryl, can you come up and kind of go over some of those questions that you had? Because there were quite a few, but I would like for her to reiterate some of those questions that she had, because we need to know that information.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Cheryl Weston, 1811 Emmett Street, Omaha, Nebraska. And I'm not sure which questions you would like for me to reiterate.
The ones that are directed for planning.
I took some notes too when she was speaking, if you
Okay. Maybe she can address those.
Okay.
Councilwoman Johnson, I took a couple kind of notes. I'm happy to kind of go through.
That's
them if
fine.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, let's try that.
I think you had asked some questions about kind of our process to engage small business in some of the commercial spaces in the mixed-use development. But if I can, just listening to, really some of your warranted concerns about the project, I'd like to do what I can
Hey, Sydney, can you just repeat your name and address?
Sorry, Sydney
Yeah.
Franklin, 75 North.
And Cheryl, I'm going to have you sit down in the front there just while she speaks. Yeah, thank you.
2112 North 30th Street in Omaha. So you had asked about some concerns with parking and there being 109 parking stalls and just ADA compliant stalls. So I'm gonna look up what the number of ADA units are in the development, because I apologize, I don't know off the top of my head, but I do wanna just kind of relay to you that any development plan such as this that comes before
Yeah,
city.
Sydney, can you address us, would you?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we just.
That comes before city council has to be approved by the planning department. And so there has to be adequate parking in any project based on the use of the project. So we wouldn't have reached this point if the parking were inadequate. And that's the same with the ADA stalls. And so I just kind of wanted to share that with you. And the same with police and fire. You'd referenced maybe some concerns about police or fire accessing the project. Again, this has to be vetted through planning department staff and then approved by the planning department before it reaches city council. So all of that would have to be adequate up to City of Omaha standards before it would reach this position. You had asked about folks being displaced. So Don's correct. 75 North, one of the many things that we have going on right now, we're an affiliate of a federal Choice Neighborhoods grant through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development that's focused on Spencer Homes public housing site, which is down the street. That will be demolished next year, and those residents which will be displaced, will have first right of refusal to live in this Highlander development and to subsequent units that are developed by 75 North. Roughly a third of the units will be replacement housing for those residents. On this site that we're talking about today, the housing authority, the Omaha Housing Authority, demolished Hilltop Homes and Pleasant View Homes in roughly 2009, and then in the late 1990s, and then in 2009, 2010. These lots have sat vacant since then. So since 2009, these have been overgrown fields that 75 North closed on. We purchased these sites in 2014 is when we had access to these sites. This project hasn't displaced anyone because no one's lived there. Again, the Housing Authority demolished Hilltop Homes in late 1990s and Pleasant View Homes, where this site is located in 2009. This has been vacant for over a decade. There's been no one displaced by this project. This project is going to be a needed investment in this community that touches on what 75 North has gone to lengths to hear from the community in terms of housing needs, investments in economic development strategies and commercial development, and in things that not only advance the physical layout of the neighborhood, but also people. So that kind of takes me to the next thing that you referenced, which is how folks are being impacted in terms of business opportunity, contracting opportunity, employment. So because this project is being subsidized this is the first project in our choice neighborhood development. And so because we're receiving government funding from the federal government, we are required to comply with what's called Section 3 requirements, which is a federal expectation for anyone receiving federal funding that folks that are lower income or extremely low income get first kind of access to any contractual employment training opportunities that are associated with this project. We are mandated by the federal government for that. There's also, you mentioned how they're going to be paid. There's a Davis-Bacon prevailing wage expectation that is a core component of this. So we have to pay, anyone working on this project is going to receive a prevailing wage. You referenced the mixed income housing strategy. I was a little bit confused, and so maybe you can clarify when I finish. If your assumption is that we have too much affordable housing or not enough. I kind of heard both. If anyone. You said not enough? Too much, okay. And then also that maybe moderately income individuals are being left out of developments like this. And actually, that's kind of a personal stance of mine as well. In projects like this, there are folks that are a certain level of income that's, between maybe moderate or a higher income that may still, that could still use some support, especially if it's a larger family that are over income for a lot of different initiatives that an organization like 75 North might move forward, whether it's education or housing or a summer school camp scholarship for your kid. You make $2 more an hour and now you don't receive that support. That's actually an issue that I have personally with a lot of this kind of community development, is that there is a segment of the population that does get left out. But this project does have accommodations for folks that are moderately, have household incomes that are considered moderate. Roughly a third of this project, of the units that are being developed, are for their replacement housing for public housing residents. So we can't charge more than 30% of their household income for their units. But the next layer of subsidy is 60%. And so that's where we consider kind of moderately income individuals. If you're capped at 60% of AMI, you can qualify for those units, and then the remaining units are market rate. And so because we know the demographics of Highlander, we know that this is still a community that is struggling with poverty and intergenerational poverty, our market rate units are priced at a place where a moderately, a family that has a moderate income can typically afford those market rate units, if that helps to clarify. The last thing that I have here is you referenced something pertaining to the types of businesses, and if we are contacting businesses to operate in the mixed-use building, yes, that's a big piece of my job, is finding tenants that complement the activity that's already happening along the North 30th Corridor and in the Highlander community. I'll tell you, we have had conversations with just about every credit union and bank in Omaha to try to attract, incentivize a financial institution to open up a bank branch in the community. We've been working with the Chamber's Reach initiative to get connections with small business owners, small nonprofit organizations that can fit in that just under 6,000 square feet of space that can be subdivided. And so, yes, we are working with our community partners to find an appropriate tenant for that, for those spaces, and that could be a for-profit or a nonprofit. You asked what's the cost of this kind of investment in the Highlander community. It's a resounding positive outcome for the community. It's a win for all of Omaha, and specifically for District 2 in the North 30th corridor, that this kind of investment that considers a diversity of income levels and a diversity of people that can live and work and play in a healthy and enriching way. Those are the kind of pillars on which we stand at 75 North, and that's all that this project is. And so I think at the beginning I may have missed a couple of the things that you said, but I hope that answers your questions. And I'm obviously here if there are any additional.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Ms. Franklin, for answering those questions, and would also ask Ms. Weston if she would provide us a copy of those questions that she had, because I think the questions were valid. It doesn't take away or remove the merit and the uniqueness and the opportunity that this project will bring to District 2.
Yeah.
We were just seeking knowledge in terms of what we wanted to provide to those that live in District 2 that have for a very long time lacked information being funneled to it in terms of how processes work.
Yeah, and Councilwoman Johnson, I do want to say, over the last year and a half, our typical way of engaging the community broadly has obviously changed. We are doing most of our engagement specifically with our Choice Grant and the Spencer Housing Projects. And for this project, we're doing those virtually. People are sick of Zoom, and so we don't have a ton of folks joining those calls, but we have them regularly, and they're recorded. The City of Omaha is a partner in all of this, and so on, I believe it's the Choice HUD newsletter that the city puts out, these links, these pre-recorded meetings, if folks aren't able to attend, they're accessible on Facebook and on all of our websites. People also have my phone number, my email, and so there's really, if folks want to know what's going on, there's a way for them to tap in. Hopefully next year we're able to convene in person more regularly, but right now we are doing that via Zoom, and I know that that can be prohibitive for some people.
All right. And then I do have a few more questions myself, if I could get some answers on. I did have the opportunity to see your renderings. Can you give me some more clarification on the home specifications? Will they be, is there going to be a two-bedroom, two bathrooms, things like that?
Yes. Do you have the?
I don't have the paper application.
So these are studio to 8-bedroom units. So they won't be very many of those large bedroom units. We are required to have a certain number of larger bedroom units for, because some of the larger families from Spencer Homes could be relocating to this site. I apologize, I don't know the number, but I think it may only be like one. Go ahead, Don. Is it okay if I stand?
Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning. In your packets and is the application, and the application includes a table of unit sizes and
the size, but it doesn't
There's
break
a breakdown
down.
of the units. I'm sorry?
The specifications?
Yes.
Okay, would you like to tell me what they are?
Well, it's 83 pages, but they did go into each one and whether it's 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and then they also provide the layouts.
Okay, do the layouts?
Bathrooms and where those bathrooms are placed.
Okay.
There are floor plans as well, yes.
Okay.
They have all of the different floor.
Okay. All right, so what is the route for material movement when you start your construction? First, let me start off with this. When will you break ground?
So we're closing this December, and we'll start soon after.
Okay, and then when do you intend to complete the project?
So because of what's going on kind of in the construction world, and labor shortages is still an issue, and material price gouges really, we are extending our construction budget only slightly. We'll likely finish in April of 2023. We had initially planned to complete in February. We're looking at April of 2023.
Okay. And then, so while you're doing that and you're building, what is the route for the material to be moved in and out in the neighborhoods? In other words, is there a route planned?
Yeah, I apologize, Councilwoman Johnson. I don't want to give you any information that's incorrect. If we have an opportunity to connect offline, I can bring our general contractor that can maybe share that detail. I don't know. 29th Street is kind of the main artery for this project. It would likely be that route to keep traffic off of North 30th Street, but that's something I can confirm for you at a later date if you'd like to know.
Yeah, I would like to know. And then, is there a construction schedule?
Yes.
That we could have access to?
Of course.
And then, were you going to provide that later, or?
Yes, I can have that email to you.
All right, and
I'll email it
then,
to you.
can you provide the steps that you took to engage neighbors about the project?
Yes, I believe we sent an email previously with kind of with our full engagement strategy. Did you receive that?
I did not.
Okay, I'll check on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I can have that sent to you.
All right, do you recall what neighborhood associations you may have contacted?
I can reference that list and get it back to you, or
Okay.
and let you know.
What is your plan to engage the neighbors from the beginning of the project and throughout the completion of the project?
So we've done, so this is part of 75 North's master plan for the community. So we did lengthy, years-long strategic planning sessions for what you see today in Highlander and also what's happening currently and things in the future. And so we've been doing that since 2012. We've been engaging folks through surveys, focus groups, one-on-one conversations, and community meetings, getting input for the master plan for this site, which includes this development. Even though that's now years old, it's still a central component of this. How we're engaging folks currently is typically through survey and through Zoom. We have many obligations because we're receiving federal funds and reporting requirements on how we're engaging folks on the project. Again, the obligations that we have to HUD, and because of COVID, we're doing that typically via Zoom. I have a lot of one-on-one conversations with folks that are interested in what's going on, with contractors and small business operators, emerging developers that want to work on these projects. And so that's just been something that's been ongoing since we broke ground on our first phase of development in 2015.
Okay, so for this project, when you break ground and you're building, throughout that whole entire process, we're in an older neighborhood and
Right.
there are a lot of moving parts. I would like to know if there is a plan to continue the engagement with the neighbors, not necessarily community groups, and through surveys and things of that nature, because as we know, construction folks will be coming in and out of the neighborhood, and they will undoubtedly will need to block the street for whatever purpose to get their material in and out. So we would need to have some type of engagement throughout
Right.
that process
Absolutely.
to engage the neighbors so that they are aware that they need to change their movement in terms of how they get in and out of their homes.
Absolutely. The good thing with this project is that, there's literally not a single person that lives between Blondo and Burdette. Really, the folks that will be most impacted are the people that work at Charles Drew. This is just south of their campus. There's accommodations for that, but there's not a single person that lives in this development site. The closest homes are obviously those on the folks that live on the east side of 30th Street that butt up to 30th in our initial housing development. They have a parking lot that disconnects them from the development, and they'll be impacted. And then homes on Parker Street, there's a row of 6 homes there. They'll be a little bit disconnected, but fortunately, the primary development site, there's no one that lives on that side of the street. Charles Drew has been engaged. They're a partner of 75 North, and of course, the Highlander residents that are currently living on the east side of 30th Street they'll be aware of that schedule. And I'll find out what that, what the plan is for how materials are moved in and out of the site and how construction equipment is moved in and out of the site. So we can create an ease of access so that our residents aren't impacted too greatly.
Thank you. And then what safety mechanism will be in place throughout the project? In other words, will the project be fenced off, or will there be different things used to ensure that a danger doesn't exist?
So we have a very reputable general contractor. They actually completed our third housing phase, which is the Nobility Point Senior Housing. Hopefully this group is aware. We believe that they will enlist every safety precaution imaginable, but when I contact them for an update on how the materials will be routed, I'll also ask what the safety plan is, because there is one. And there's a document that I can share with you.
Thank you. And then how many people will be hired on this project from District 2?
So that's something I can get back with you at a later date. You had some broader numbers about I don't know the specifics for District 2 specifically. We do have numbers on our Section 3 contractors, which are not, I guess, specific to District 2. These are folks, we're generally targeting Spencer Homes residents, North 30th Corridor, individuals and business operators in kind of North Omaha, generally speaking. District 2, I mean, I guess that would encompass all of that. We can find out those numbers and get that to you.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Right.
And again, thank you for being patient and answering all of those questions. I would also like to move that we approve this.
Thank you.
Also want to point out that 75 North has been very beneficial in District 2, specifically with Big Mama's there, and now it looks like you're doing a lot of things with your outdoor space, having concerts and really engaging the community. And so I'm hoping that this new addition will give us the same type of value to the district.
We hope so. We think so. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I'll second that motion. Mr. Harding, you're recognized.
I want to thank Sydney for, I mean, all the information is very helpful. And just for the record, too, I think that Amy was looking at the actual floor plans. The residential unit mix is on page 31 of the application, and the timeline, or at least a projected timeline, which I think he said might have a little bump at the end, is listed on 36 as well. As it relates to access of information too, I think, Sydney is obviously someone who has a lot of information and accessibility and is very willing to engage and respond. Remember too that this is just the plan stage. The agreement stage is next. So this will again have an opportunity for the public to weigh in addition to all the meetings that she has scheduled at the planning board, and then again when it comes back to city council for the agreement.
Yeah,
but
we'll be here for that.
Thank you very much, City.
Thanks.
No further lights. Roll call.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 14 is approved 7-0. Item 15, a resolution to approve the 1120 Lofts Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Plan located at 1128 North 20th Street in an amount up to $485,000.
Public hearing and vote on number 15 is today. Mr. Seaton.
Yes, good afternoon. Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning. This project is another, excuse me, affordable housing development. It involves construction of a new apartment building on a vacant parcel at 20th Street and Paul Streets, about a 1-acre parcel. This will be a 3-story apartment building with 30 rental units. Like the previous project, this is a mixed income project. There will be 6 of the 30 units are market rate units. 24 will be affordable housing units. Project's being developed with LIHTC funding, low-income housing tax credit funding. These units will be larger, however, than we typically see. They're primarily 3 and 4 bedroom apartment units. There's a surface parking lot on the site with about 46 stalls. Developer 1120 Lofts LLC, managed by Darren Smith. Total project, I'll give you another rendering here. Total project investment is about $6.6 million. They are requesting $485,000 in TIF support. I would note that since it's a 30-unit residential project, there's not a lot of permanent jobs. We're looking at 3 newly created jobs. 2 of them would be part-time. 1 would be a full-time position. And the applicant estimates approximately 75 construction jobs. This project meets the required criteria of our TIF program. It has been approved by the City Planning Board. It's an appropriate land use for the area. Complies with our city's master plan, and we ask for your approval.
Thank you. Other proponents today, number 15.
Good afternoon, Council. Darren Smith, Arch Icon Development, 509 Walker, Woodbine, Iowa. Here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Other proponents?
Cheryl Weston, 1811 Emmett Street, Omaha, Nebraska. I am here for our committee, and we do support this. We just had a couple of questions, but we also had some comments. And this is relevant to the project before, which is kind of by the same. North 75 has some interest in this. We looked at the package, and we just had several comments on page 15 on the cost-benefit analysis, and they weren't so much as comments, but that we saw here where the developer on this site will say on item number 3, the development of this site will provide employment by increasing the demand for personal services in the area and employees to provide these services. And what we were commenting on is how different this is set up and the previous one. And this is what we wanted to see is how this demand, how is it going to affect the community? This is in District 2 as well. And we want positive projects. So we're just commenting on how it's outlined here, and if maybe in future, when these people come before the city planning department, they could be outlined a little bit more so that the average citizen, when we're looking at this, and we want to be, I want to stress District 2, we do want to be positive about growth and things that are happening, but when you don't say anything, you just point blank and one word or something, it's important that it be listed. How is the demand, how is this going to happen for the project? Then on page 23, here the parking plan, and this is what makes a difference, and we like this, was that this site will include 1 parking with 46 stalls. They're going to have 30 units, and they outlined what will be included for the ADA requirements. Again, as I say, we're not always condemning or criticizing. It's just that why can't these packages be presented and put together for the everyday person? Because that's what we have the right to come down here to question and make a comment on. On page 32, and this was again a positive, is they took and outlined every unit. There's 30, the size and the cost, and there is mixed income levels here where individuals would be able to meet that requirement. Middle people would be able to get apartments there. on your page 33 of the package outlined as far as the jobs that would be. There is no mention whether these jobs would be seek from people in the area or where, if there's any particular, as she said before, Davis-Bacon acts or whatever. But this is what's needed, is to show where these jobs. The only thing we're asking is there any effort to make for people who are going to be in the area? On page 34, towards the bottom, underneath item 4, there was comments that the group looked at. The apartments will create a demand for goods and services and increase foot traffic north downtown Omaha. As I said before, this is in District 2, but it says north downtown Omaha, and it's like it's cutting this off so that if you are anywhere past Hamilton Street, there's a difference. And it's very evident when you see plans like this and that statement that this is going to be for demands and services traffic north of downtown. 48, if you look at page 48, "46 on-site parking sites." We mentioned that before, which is great. And then there's 3-story building heights. We noticed that on the previous project, there was 4 stories. The district likes this 3-story, so we don't always look like this project area, because that's what people begin to think of. On page 49, the project further goals of the City of Omaha Master Plan, providing good quality housing options in mixed patterns, types, and styles, and promoting the construction of affordable housing. Again, we don't want to see continuously have so much affordable that there isn't enough of the middle income that gets left out, middle housing. This proposed project is also consistent with the vision of North Omaha Village Revitalization Plan and the Forever North Housing and Transportation Strategy. One thing that we saw, and many of you, well, might be many of you, remember the great late Diana Washington. And we looked at this project and we thought of Diana Washington in a song that she had, "What a Difference a Day Makes." We looked at this and said, what a difference in a project design and development concept makes for the people in the area when they're north of Hamilton Street. So if you get that message is, when you looked at what was on 30th Street versus what's going to be on 20th Street, which is only a few blocks north of Cummings, 1120, we're on North 30th Street. Why is it that we get, it appears to be different styling, treatment, and knowledge of communications? So what we're asking for, again, we do support this project, is that when it comes before you, do whatever you have to do, work with city planning, and it's not all city council's problem or fault, but work where you get more language, more information, that we don't even need to come to address these questions. So we're just asking that of you when these projects come, and they should be treated the same for all of District 2. Have more information, then we don't have to come and take your time to take and ask for 20, 40 different questions. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thank you. Other proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Hi, my questions are for you, the developer, please. Thank you, and thank you for making a commitment to help in the development in North Omaha. We really appreciate that. I do have a few more questions. They're basically on the same lines that I had asked previously. And when do you plan to break ground on this project?
Sure. Again, Darren Smith, Arch Icon Development. We're the owner and general contractor, 509 Walker, Woodbine, Iowa. This is similar, very similar, almost a twin to the garage lofts that we built at 24th and Howard. And we did this for part of that reason because it went over pretty well as affordable housing. It's 3 and 4 bedroom apartments because you don't find many 3 and 4 bedroom affordable apartments for families anywhere near downtown. Our plan is to start construction in March and finish in February. It's basically the same schedule that we had on the previous project, as long as we'll bid it. We're going to go out to bid, kind of a slow bid this fall to test the market, given that construction costs are outrageous right now. And if we need to, we'll rebid it at the end of the year. We do have, we're our own construction company as well. And we always go out to the small and emerging businesses and always give them preference as long as they're within reasonable proximity to the other most favorable bid and they're capable and qualified.
And with that being said, have you given any thought to the movement of how you will get material in and out during the construction?
Well, on this site, it's got Kellam Elementary on one side, only 2 access points. We are looking at, there's an unused property across the street to the east with a parking that we're going to try to reach out to and get a temporary construction easement for staging. So we're not taking space on the street for staging. We can just go back and cross. But other than that, we haven't dug into the details of construction. And we don't have a detailed construction schedule yet. Be happy to share that with you as soon as we get things bid.
I would very much appreciate that so that I can communicate that to those people that might be impacted by this project.
Sure.
Can you please provide us also with a construction schedule?
Yes.
And then I'm going to ask again, what steps have you taken to engage the neighbors about this project?
We need to do more there. We were involved with, we're also doing the Santa Francis Cottages development. So we work with M Space and Lovegren and Linda Toomey to reach out to those people in the same neighborhood. And I've got their contacts and I'll reach out to them, Concord Square. NP Dodge will manage the property. They manage all of our affordable apartments at this point. And we'll reach out to all of the employers in the area, the school, Metro Area Transit, when it comes time to lease up, and we can start that process up to 4 months prior to certificate of occupancy. And we can't give preference to people in the area. They have to income qualify, but I know we'll have a waiting list, and if we reach out to those folks in the area early enough, we'll make sure they get to the top of the list.
All right. The mayor's website has a neighborhood directory, very handy. You mentioned Concord Square being perhaps the only neighborhood association. There are numerous neighborhood associations there.
I've got a whole list.
Please reach out to them. Is there a plan to engage the neighbors from the beginning of the project and throughout the project?
Now that we're this far into planning and know when we're going to start construction, now we can sit down with those people and let them know what the plan is moving forward from a construction standpoint, from this is what it is. This is 3 and 4 bedroom apartments, what the rents are going to be, promote interest in that, make sure that they know what's going to be available and when, in hopes of attracting anybody who might be interested. We're somewhat aware of maybe some future business developments in the area that might be adding some employment as well. So I can't really speak about those because I don't know how public they are, but want to engage the neighbors in that way as well to make sure that they know what we're going to be doing and when.
Any safety mechanism have been given, any thought given about safety mechanisms that will be put in place to ensure the neighborhood safety in terms of environment, et cetera?
Sure. Yeah, as I said, we do our own construction. Everything will be fenced off. Elementary is on the west side, so we'll have to be very mindful of safety and security. And we'll have cameras on site, and generally have a safety person that comes weekly and drives the site at least weekly.
And then how many people will be hired on this project from District 2? Any idea?
I couldn't say really. This has housing trust funds, where the previous project was talking about some of the federal funding requiring Section 3. Home funds typically require Section 3. This does not have home funds. This has housing trust funds, so it's there are a few less requirements. We do try to engage with the neighborhood from a construction standpoint. We hired several people when we did Flats on Howard. How we reach out to them, I think, is when we go through the bid process and we go up to 24th and Lake and reach out to the people who are in small emerging businesses that say, you know what, maybe we don't have what we need to do the job, but we have some employees that can participate.
All right, again, I really appreciate you coming forth and bringing the project in District 2, but I also want to reiterate that we really want economic growth and all of that, but we also want to make sure, because we are in a poverty-stricken area, we also want to make sure that these things that I've asked are really addressed. So with that being said, I will go ahead and move that this is accepted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll second that. Mr. Harding, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Darren, if you can stand there if you want. I'm just going to throw some accolades on you. So
Okay.
If you want to.
Oh, wow.
I just want to thank you for your continued interest, investment, and development in all parts of our town. I mean, you mentioned garage lofts and Flats at Howard, which are in a different area, and now with 1120. So thank you for your continued interest and investment in Omaha too.
Thank you.
And then, Ms. Watson, I just had one question. I meant to ask it earlier too. If you don't mind. Weston, I'm sorry, I said Watson. Apologize. It's just a quick question. I know.
You can take as long as you want.
Okay. No.
Cheryl Weston, 1811 Emmett Street, Omaha, Nebraska.
Thanks. You had mentioned on the previous project as well as this one, you made a reference to the committee that you represent. I just wanted to make note of what committee that was. I didn't know.
North Omaha Betterment Group. We're just grassroots, and it's not a great big, but we have come together, and we're probably going to get more members to come in. It's made up of just individuals from North Omaha District 2, and we're beginning to question these things. And actually, I was going to give privately, but Councilman Melton, we watch the city council meetings, and you have helped us to become more involved. And whether you intended to or not, I don't know, but you have helped us to, because you're very, always want questions. You always want to say, we want the answers and development. So that's where we're coming from. And I think, as I said today, we've been very positive and promotive as proponents for this. But, it could be more if or maybe we'd have less if things were explained a little bit more, just as we found out information today that we didn't know.
Okay.
So, but
thank you.
That's our group.
I was just curious of what the group was. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you. No further lights. There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Bagley. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 15 is approved, 7-0. Item 16, a resolution to approve the proposed extremely blighted areas generally bounded by Mary and Whitmore Streets on the north, Pratt Street on the south, 38th Street on the east, and 60th Avenue on the west.
Public hearing and vote on number 16 is today. We'll hear from the applicant, Ms. Hadley.
Good afternoon, Bridget Hadley, City Planning. Just going to have this up here in front of you. I will speak to this in just a moment. This is as zoomed in as it's going to get. So before you is a request for an extremely blighted area designation. An extremely blighted area, just to give some background, extremely blighted area, or CRAs, community redevelopment areas, or areas that have been declared substandard and blighted, which meet 2 additional quantitative or demographic criteria using the most recent 5-year estimates of the U.S. Census. So that's what an extremely blighted area is and how it's defined in the community development law. One of the criteria is that the census geography or geographies that are chosen to be designated have an average poverty rate that exceeds 20%. The other criteria is that the census geography or geographies chosen to be designated have an average unemployment rate that is at least 200% of the average employment rate for the state of Nebraska. The primary benefits of the extremely blighted area designation are centered around housing, affordable housing development, and home ownership. Qualified homeowners purchasing homes in areas designated as extremely blighted would be eligible for a state income tax credit up to $5,000. Another benefit is a 20-year TIF term versus a 15-year TIF term for some TIF projects. And there is a current map on our website. If anyone wanted to see it, it's on our economic development website in the planning department. Now turning to the actual study, which is on this map, the study area. So as I mentioned, we received, or I may not have mentioned, we received a request from Habitat for Humanity to look at or study an area to determine if their project, their proposed project, would be eligible for an extremely blighted area designation. So on this map, this blue hashed area represents the proposed Blue Stem redevelopment project, phase 1 and 2. And here is the key down here, and I think this might show everything. So these black and gold dashed lines are outlining the entire community redevelopment area for this section of Omaha. Everything within this boundary is in a community redevelopment area. So again, every extremely blighted area designation starts with an area that is already a community redevelopment area or CRA. The red crosshatched areas represent extremely blighted areas that have already been designated. And then these black lines represent census block groups. This particular project site happens to overlap 2 different block groups, census block groups. So as with our CRA studies, we will look beyond the potential redevelopment site to determine what census geographies will and can become a part of that designation that we are studying. For the extremely blighted area designation, considerations are given to areas that have potential for increased home ownership, affordable housing development, areas where the City of Omaha Planning Department's Community Development Division partners have housing initiatives, efforts projected or underway, and areas where there are additional opportunities for community revitalization and economic development, just to name a few. In this particular study, we used the 2019 5-year census data estimates to determine the average poverty and unemployment rates for the qualifying census geographies in the study. So essentially, we're looking at this area in here to see what would qualify. The threshold for the average unemployment rate for this particular study was 6.68%. And the threshold for the average poverty rate, again, exceeds 20%. After selecting a number of census geographies that fit our evaluation criteria, we calculated the average poverty rates and unemployment rates for the selected geographies. Once we reached the number of census geographies that met or exceeded that threshold. The threshold I mentioned earlier, 6.68 for average unemployment, and exceeds the 20% poverty rate. Then our evaluation was complete. So also in your council packet, not only is the map that I will show you in a moment, but is this table. Let's see if I can. So this is the table that resulted in the map that is also in your packet. So these are the final census geographies, census block groups that were chosen that meet the thresholds. So what we did is we take the census data, and this column, this is civil labor force, unemployment, unemployment rate. And then in this column, we have the population with poverty calculation, in poverty calculation, and then the poverty rate. So what we do is we take and look at, of the census geographies, which ones have a rate that is in that threshold. So again, for the unemployment, is this unemployment rate greater than the 6.68? So we're looking for those, and then for the poverty, we're looking for those. When we do our calculation, though, we use the actual population numbers or unemployment numbers. Bottom line is we get to 7.46% happen to be the average unemployment rate for these census geographies, which are listed in the study and the report, which is also a part of the council packet. And then the poverty rate for these census geographies was 26.13%. So those exceeded the threshold that we were striving for. So as I mentioned, the table before you represents the census geographies that met our evaluation criteria, which means that they had the average unemployment and average poverty rates that met or exceeded the thresholds. Those census geographies resulted in the proposed extremely blighted area map that is before you. So after all that analysis, what we ended up with, this is as zoomed out as it'll go. So these blue areas represent the selected geographies that we are asking for you to go ahead and designate as extremely blighted. Again, within the CRA area, and it's not including any of these, the reason there would be this area left out is that it's all math. Doing several iterations to get to that percentage, to hit those thresholds or exceed, some of these census data was so low that it brought the average down. And so therefore, by taking those out, we were able to get to the averages we needed. So the blue shaded areas are the areas we are asking for your approval for the extremely blighted area designation. With that, I will ask for your approval.
Thank you, Bridget. As long as you have that map up, can you just point out which census block relates to the next item on our agenda, number 17, because they're related?
It's these two right here.
Great, thank you.
So yeah, if I go back, so the site is here. These are the two census block groups. And so it's right in here.
Okay, thank you. Any other proponents on number 16 today? Seeing none, yep.
Luis Jimenez, 3306 Birch Street. I'm a proponent, and I know there's been some community members that complain about TIF and perhaps don't quite fully understand it, that it's coming from the Nebraska legislator, the TIF setup. So for my part, I've been looking at when you guys are going to be changing some of these maps, because this is the body to do it, to change like the CRA map and the extremely blighted area maps. So that's why I'm a proponent. I've been looking forward to changes like these. Thank you.
And Louise, you are here representing yourself, correct?
I am representing myself, yes, as somebody that lives in this part of town.
Thank you.
And I like civic engagement, so that's why I try to come here every Tuesday when I can, most Tuesdays. Oh, and actually my address is 2709 Dewey Street. That's that's where I live.
So what was the first address you gave?
That's my old apartment. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I moved this month.
Gotcha. Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing's closed. Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also would like to thank Ms. Hadley for breaking that down, the map. That was very beneficial for District 2 as well as those that may be on Zoom as well as those here attending the meeting. Really appreciate that. Kudos. I would go ahead and move for the approval.
Motion a second. Roll call.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Bagley. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 16 is approved, 7-0. Item 17, a resolution to approve the Blue STEM Phases 1 and 2 Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Plan located along Forest Lawn Avenue between Mary Plaza and Curtis Avenue in an amount up to $3,440,000.
Public hearing on vote and number 17 is today. We'll hear from Ms. Hadley again.
Afternoon again, Bridget Hadley, City Planning. So now we have the Blue STEM Phases 1 and 2. Sorry. So you have the Blue STEM Phases 1 and 2, TIF redevelopment project plan. And just to give some aerials and try to orient. Phase 1 and 2 are up here. So this is Sorensen Parkway here. And then this is Curtis Avenue here. And then this is Forest Lawn Avenue. So this is the actual former site of the Wintergreen Apartments. And some may have remembered them as the former Myatt Apartments before Wintergreen. And then these are the adjacent lots to the south. This aerial is just a zoomed in aerial of the actual former Wintergreen site. And so you can see where this is where the apartments used to be here and then here. And then this is another aerial version that shows phase 2 here, and then this is what phase 1 would be. So the entire redevelopment site of the former Wintergreen Apartments does include phase 1 and 2. There will be a preliminary plat for this very redevelopment project plan that will come before you in a couple of weeks. That will give you a lot more detail about the site plan layout, design, and so forth. This is more to cover the TIF and the financing. So the former Wintergreen Apartments was vacant for over a decade or more. It was demolished in 2006. The City of Omaha was the owner. 1701 LLC, which is a subsidiary of Habitat for Humanity, purchased the former Wintergreen site from the City of Omaha just this couple of months ago in July of this year, purchased it for $1. And then the 1701 LLC purchased these southern adjacent lots from private owners. The transformation of the entire redevelopment site, which is about 18 acres total, will produce 87 single-family, multi-generational affordable homes. Phase 1 will consist of a new construction of 15 new homes, and then phase 2 will consist of construction of 72 new homes. According to Habitat for Humanity, affordable basically means a decent home for a family to afford with a minimum monthly payment that is roughly 30% of their monthly household income. And I would say, I know that affordable is thrown around a lot. I think it should be considered affordable is at every income level. 30% has kind of been used as a standard, though, for each of those income levels. So Habitat for Humanity says they typically are looking to serve those who have a 30 to 60% AMI, but they do go up to 80%. Moving to total TIF eligible uses or costs, there are about 3.8 or a little over 3.8 million in TIF eligible costs. A significant portion of those costs are to help offset the cost of site work as well as public improvements. There's going to be significant infrastructure installation and reconfiguration that will be involved with this project. There will be new streets, sidewalks, public sewers, electrical connections, gas and water lines. And here are just a few pictures provided to me by the developer. These are some current views of Phase 1 and of Phase 2. And this is a preliminary layout of the lots for both phases. So again, Phase 1 and then Phase 2. Public improvements for this project are going to be about $1.84 million, and solely for sewer, water, streets, new streets, sidewalks, and electrical work. Job creation is typically not a focus of housing development projects. This particular project supports about 93 Habitat for Humanity jobs through their business model of in-house construction services, back office support, and volunteers for some construction work. The total TIF investment is approximately $3.4 million for both phases, representing about 16% of the invested total dollars, or the 16% of the capital stack, however you look at it. But I do like to look at this in terms of an investment that public is making as well as the developers are making. The total project investment for both phases is about $21.5 million. The TIF project complies with the master plan, community development law, and our TIF program. I do have a few renderings. So here are some elevations that you will see in Phase 1 and Phase 2. And then this is an elevation of one of their single ranch-style homes. Because as I said, these are multi-generational, so young families, empty nesters, you'll have them all. That's their intention, to have all of them there. The TIF Committee and Planning Board has given their approval, so with that, I would ask for your approval.
Thank you. Any other proponents on number 17 today?
Thank you, Bridget. I'm Al Shimmick. I'm Finance Director with Habitat for Humanity, 16628 Howard Circle. One quick thing, Bridget mentioned that the affordable to us means, I think you actually used the word maximum, or sorry, minimum of 30%. It's actually the maximum. So we try to keep an affordable house payment that is set such that you don't use more than 30% of your gross monthly income on one house payment. Otherwise, I'm available for questions.
Great, thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Seeing none, Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
This seems to be a great investment. I'm going to go ahead and move for the approval.
Thank you.
Motion or second. Mr. Begley, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. As someone who spent a lot of years at OPPD in the field, I know that wintergreen area well, and it's great to see what you're doing here to revamp that and provide affordable housing, and that's a huge area. So I'm very much in support of this, and I'm glad to do so. Thanks for your work.
Thank you. Roll call.
Harding. Yes. Johnson. Yes. Melton. Yes. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Yes. Bagley.
Aye.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 17 is approved, 7-0. Item 18, to consider a Class C liquor license for East Coast Eats located at 7622 Dodge Street.
Public hearing and vote on number 18 is today. We have Mr. Tripp by Zoom. We'll unmute you here in a second. Give that a try.
Yes, hi, I'm unmuted. My name's Michael Tripp. I live at 1137 Devon Drive, Papillion, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents on number 18? Seeing none, any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Tripp, this is in my district, and I'm supportive. I just will give you a second to talk about the new establishment here and what the business plan is and what you intend to serve.
The current business plan is to serve, we're located right next to Smitty's Garage, actually. And we're getting a lot of feedback from the community. They're enjoying the Latin menu that we have at East Coast Eats. We also have a menu based off of items generally found on the East Coast. From Maine all the way down to Florida, we'll create dishes based off of specific dishes to the states. So we're getting a lot of feedback as far as, it would be nice to be able to have a more varied drink option. So that's basically why we're trying to add some beer to go with our milkshakes and, other things of that nature.
Great. I'll come give it a try.
Thank you.
Is there a motion? Second. Roll call.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Bagley. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 18 is approved, 7-0. Item 19, to consider a liquor license addition application for Pacific Springs Village located at 805 South 173rd Court to add an outdoor area and main floor indoor area.
Public hearing and vote on number 19 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon, Adam Kenning, Corporate Legal Counsel for Emmanuel, 1044 North 115th Street. Here to answer any questions, we also have our General Manager of Culinary Operations, to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Any other proponents that want to speak today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Mr. Harding, you're recognized.
One of the letters of opposition I received on this seemed mostly to deal with maybe some light spillage. So I'm going to support this, but I also just wanted to, on the record, that I was going to have planning take a look at that if there are any concerns. So I think Mr. Kenning, maybe we can get in touch with you that way. So
sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Roll call.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Bagley. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 19 is approved, 7-0. Consent agenda. Any member of the City Council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the City Council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by the City Council Rules of Order.
The public hearings on agenda items number 20 through 26 are today. If you wish to address the City Council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by name, address, and who you represent, and if you are a proponent or an opponent. And for council members' reference, we do have Mr. Stork available by Zoom for number 20, and Ms. Bain available for number 21 if needed. Are there any proponents on these items? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Rowe. Bagley. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0. Item 27, an ordinance to accept the fiscal year 2021 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant in the amount of $409,839.
Public hearing on number 27 is today. Proponents, please.
Amber Parker, City of Omaha Mayor's Office, 1819 Farnham Street, just here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 28, an ordinance to acquire private property for the Papillion Creek Interceptor Rehabilitation South 36th Street and Rayner Parkway project.
Public hearing on number 28 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 29, an ordinance to accept the bid of Nebraska's Best Lawn and Landscape LLC in the annual amount of $36,000 for snow removal at police facilities.
Public hearing on number 29 is today. Any proponents, please? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 30, an ordinance to approve the agreement with County Garo to provide intelligence analyst services for the Metro Drug Task Force.
Public hearing on number 30 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 31, an ordinance to accept a grant agreement from the Nebraska Commission on Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice in the amount of $40,000.
Public hearing on number 31 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Non-action items, items 32 through 45, do not require public hearing or city council consideration at this meeting, but will be placed on a future agenda for public hearing and/or vote. The reason for non-action is noted after the item on the agenda, as well as the date the item is expected to appear on agenda for consideration.
Motion to adjourn. I'll second. Roll call.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley.
Aye.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Meeting is adjourned at 4:15.